Hi, let's discuss education, how it could be and how it should be. I'm Mike Saenz. Welcome. So this is the first of hopefully many discussions I'll be having on education. But before I get into the nuts and bolts of educational theory and practice, I think it's worthwhile to devote an entire video to answer this important question. Why bother? Why should you bother taking part in discussions on education? After all, there are only so many hours in a day, so many days in your life, and there are many legitimate options calling for your time. Playing with your kids, making money, getting in shape, eating donuts. So why should you take time away from these pursuits to think about and discuss education? Well, let's think about it. So most people will agree that education is important. But this fact alone doesn't necessarily mean we should be discussing it. There are many other important things in our lives that we don't routinely talk about. Dentistry is important, for example. Improper dental care can result in terrible pain and costly bills. But by and large, we leave the talk about dentistry to the dentists. They are the experts. And speaking of experts, Adam Smith taught us way back in 1776 that this division of labor is a major driver in economic growth. So you could argue if we appreciate superior goods and services, then we would actually be wrong to discuss dentistry, at least at the expense of our own specialties. And of course, just like dentistry, the field of education has specialists too, teachers and administrators. Shouldn't we treat our educators like our dentists, get out of their way, and just let them do their jobs? Well, before we do, let's look at another important discipline with specialists that we do talk about obsessively. This, of course, is politics. Now, I know you thought I was going to say sports commentary, and that's a good example too. But let's face it, people just get way too bent out of shape talking about sports. We better play it safe. So, back to politics then. Why do we talk about politics so much, but not education? Well, one reason is that we feel duty-bound to discuss politics because we live in a democracy. And in a democracy, we, the people, are an essential part of the political process. We have a sense that the identity of our country and all that that entails, freedom versus tyranny, wealth versus poverty, etc., is largely dependent upon our role in the political process. Hence, in all things political, we discuss, we analyze, we argue. With dentistry, not so much. Dentistry is not a democracy. And the education system, even the public education system, is not a democracy either. Apart from voting for school board members and bond elections, there just isn't the same kind of built-in responsibility for we the people in the education process. But on reflection, there is another reason why we talk so much about politics that does apply to education. We discuss, analyze, and argue politics because we have a firm conviction that government could be run better. Every time we argue for a law, regulation, or politician, or to repeal a law, regulation, or politician, we do so because we think politically there is great room for improvement. And this is my argument for why you should bother with education. I believe there is great room for improvement. Education could be and should be run better. Much better. Now, people have endlessly argued this point. I often see American test scores compared to other countries' test scores. You can see today's school reading lists compared to reading lists from the past, say 100 years ago. And while I think these are both valid points, today I'd like to make a less common argument. An argument inspired by the great French economist Frédéric Bastiat. Now, Bastiat is most famous for pointing out that fallacies in economics are often produced by taking into account only what is seen and not taking into account the unseen. For instance, a shopkeeper's window is broken. He must buy a new window. Well, this could be considered a good thing because the glassmaker makes a sale and benefits. That is what is seen. But what is not seen, what requires foresight to see, is what could have happened if the window had not been broken. That same money, now not used to buy the window, is used to purchase something else, say shoes. Now the shoemaker benefits in the same way that the glassmaker did, but the shopkeeper has both the window and shoes. So by using foresight, by taking into account what is not seen and what could be, we can see that the broken window is a net loss, not a net benefit. So I would like to now argue how education could be better using foresight and piano lessons. Now, I took piano lessons from the age of 8 to the age of 17. I had a lesson once a week, usually for half an hour. Not the most diligent student. I probably averaged practicing 30 minutes a day, 4 to 5 days a week. Now, by the time I was 16, I was playing what is considered difficult repertoire, Beethoven piano sonatas, Chopin polonaises, and these never failed to impress adults and friends alike. People spoke of my playing either in mystical terms, you have God-given gifts, or biologically deterministic terms, you must have it in your genes. And yet, my experience was that every student who put in the same amount of time and effort played pretty much the same caliber pieces and possessed roughly the same musical knowledge. In retrospect, the lack of variation in outcome is pretty simple. The key factor doesn't seem to be whether you have a gift from God or inherited genes somehow from a piano-playing grandfather, but rather whether you put forth long-term effort. So what's my argument then? How does this show that education has great room for improvement? Well, 10 years of music lessons, 30 minutes a day, 4 to 5 times a week, consistently produces jaw-dropping ability and knowledge, creating in children incalculable pride, self-esteem, and the belief that they can do incredible things with long-term effort. Schools have children for over 10 years, 5 days a week, for roughly 6 hours a day. 6 hours, not 30 minutes, 6 hours. Just think of what education could be. Think of the knowledge and talents children could have. As Bastiat would say, use foresight to imagine what is not seen. There is great room for improvement. But rather than focus on what education currently lacks, be excited to think about what it could be. Let's think about it, and let's talk about it. It's worth the bother. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Thank you for listening. I'll be thinking about education, what it could be and what it should be. And I hope you will too. I'm Mike Saenz. Let's get the discussions going.